Hello, dzień dobry. So, I would like to give a definition of what social media is. Not social media, but the open dictionaries in Turkish context, because the dictionaries that we have in Turkey, by means of open dictionaries, people, select their own way of defining everything. They make definitions, they make comments, and they feel so free online. But before making this presentation, I need to inform you that some of the dictionaries have been banned in Turkey for some reasons, but hopefully in the near future they will be open to the access again. Well, so to examine the reflections of gender stereotypes, masculinity, ideology, and the two-way relationship between them in the new media, the current study is grounded in social representations theory, in fact. So I will be presenting and making use of this theory. So the CRT, or social representations theory, has a discursive approach and social constructivist perspective. It gives a solid case to investigate the stereotypical content of the new media. And my present study aims to reveal how Turkish people describe women in the new media, and how the dominant masculinity ideology in Turkish culture shapes and the perceptions about women and contributes to the subordination of women, and the role of the new media in reproducing the traditional gender stereotypes. It is essential to reveal these relations because in the current political climate of Turkey, the traditional gender roles are promoted, the violence against women is elevated, and recently Turkey has withdrawn from the Istanbul Convention, as you know. Additionally, Ukrainian women are positioned as spoils of war in current Russia's attack on Ukraine, and this reveals the critical role of social media in the spread and the maintenance of masculinity ideology. This study may be helpful to the researchers who study gender roles, masculinity, and femininity, and evaluate these concepts, especially in the context of the traditional masculinity ideologies over. So, social representations theory, as you can, I will just make a brief touch upon it so that you will understand why I pick this understanding. SRT proposes a social, psychological, theoretical framework to understand the meaning-making processes of the social objects. It explains how collective understandings of a particular concept are constructed, communicated, and practiced as a shared understanding with a culture or a social group. Defined social representations as, in fact, Moscovici, the elaboration of social object by the community for the purpose of behaving and communicating. Social representations are formed via mundane interactions and communications between people in a group and function as an information package for social realities. Let's move on. The media representations of femininity or being feminine in the context of Turkey's stereotypes of women coincide with traditional gender ideologies such as beauty, weakness, dependence, motherhood, and house-related roles. So it is not much different from the rest of the world, I think, by means of these understandings. But women in Turkey are seen as sexual objects to gaze on, and they are depicted as being extremely emotional, with a blaming tone, of course. Being emotional is an excuse in the traditional understanding of Turkish culture. That is why we pay negative attention upon being emotional in Turkish cultural sphere. But in some countries, I personally do think that being emotional is not a big deal. And extremely emotional, this being extremely emotional is blamed again even in the very free media, where you can openly express your own ideas. As regards Turkey, migrant women, when I say migrant women, you should immediately understand the Syrian women who are fleeing from the conflict in Syria, and we have among around 6 million Syrian refugees in Turkey. And the number is, I think, a little bit going higher and higher, and the new elections maybe make a kind of change. But the number of women, the refugees, are booming the numbers of the entries in this kind of open dictionaries. And represented as passive and victimized individuals, and this view is grounded on their migrant status and their exposed sexual violence in the patriarchal system. So in the current study, online collaborative dictionaries are the new era public sphere, as I mentioned before. The dynamic interaction between authors constantly changes, updates, and produces a meaning related to the social world. In this regard, online collaborative dictionaries are a rich source for examining the meaning-making process for psychological phenomena. Various psychological phenomena were investigated in the literature using the Ekşi Sözlük. Ekşi Sözlük means the sour dictionary. So the words in this dictionary can be a little bit disturbing for some people to read. And one of the online collaborative dictionaries as a source, for example, hate speech toward different groups such as Chinese, Armenians, Gypsies, Syrians, and Jews. Representations of significant people, reactions to current events such as murders of women or acceptance of the women, writers to the Ekşi Sözlük. But I should again say that the Ekşi Sözlük is now banned to access. So in Turkey for the last, I think, 2 months, we cannot access it. Social media is an interactive setting where people who have various characteristics can share their ideas and beliefs, and there is no limit on this. There is no boundaries. They can be freely, expressing their ideas. It constitutes a rich source for achieving extensive data. So they just freely express their ideas about any issues, and it's a good data source, in fact. Thus, we use the sampling strategy parallels with previous works conducted on the online collaborative dictionary. Except we obtained the data based on years. We just make a kind of narrowing down to understand a certain time period, so that because it's a mass, data that is not easy to handle. So we used Ekşi Sözlük, Uludağ Sözlük. Uludağ is the name of a big mountain which is located in Bursa, and it is also very important because this dictionary was founded by the student of Uludağ University, İnci Sözlük, and Instela, which are the most used online collaborative dictionaries in Turkey. These are virtual platforms which users or writers can open a title about anything and generate content under an open title. Thus, we used these virtual platforms, similar to the related literature, to obtain our sampling. We recreated a pilot examination on online collaborative dictionaries to observe the titles related to foreign women and Turkish women. Accordingly, the most common titles were about Russian and Syrian women. Consistently, these are the most common titles in relevant literature involving international marriage and migrant women in Turkey. In addition, in quite a few of the entries, collaborative dictionary writers described women through comparisons with Asian women as well. So we examined the titles comprised Turkish, Russian, Syrian, and Asian, or girls or brides. On here, the number of the entries are meaningful by means of this, the last sentence. The number of the analyzed comments for Asian women was just 87, Syrian women 86, Russian women 296, and Turkish women 653. And when we move on to method and analytic strategy, we employed thematic discourse analysis to the data set due to the study's explanatory nature. We didn't aim to collect evidence for a particular hypothesis. Instead, we aimed to understand how women are described and made sense of online collaborative dictionaries. Thematic discourse analysis stemming from constructionist theoretical position is compatible with the feminist social constructionist approach. So, we come up with 4 different themes in these dictionaries, and I would love to touch upon each of them and then try to understand what kind of comparisons and comments have been made upon these themes. Women as a body. Throughout our sample, reproduction of racialized gender performance and hierarchy were identified through discourses about women's bodies. And women are juxtaposed hierarchically by their physical characteristics such as skin color, height, weight, and breast size and body hair. So these women's materialization as a body and use of it are a little bit disturbing, it may sound, but this is what people write down entries, and I think this is the same in many of the other dictionaries as well. Additionally, as in general, white and smooth skin was evaluated as a sign of a better desirable race, and women who possessed these were placed at the top of the hierarchical position. So, being beauty and the beauty standards may change from one culture to another, as I have been writing down lots of different cultural understandings of different definitions of beauty and or being ugly. So these are all changing from one culture to another. So from Turkish perspective, from Turkish cultural understanding, being beauty is highly related to this understanding. It's a little bit interesting. And let's have a look. When they make a comparison between Russian and Turkish women, they use these words. Russian women were evaluated as beautiful because of their white, smooth skin and tallness. Turkish women were considered ugly because of their fat body and shortness. So it is an important comparison between the understanding of these two nations. Writers compared Russian and Turkish women and mentioned biggest advantage is their skin. And let's move on. I don't want to run over my time. And the woman as a persona. This is another theme that we come across. While Turkish women were generally evaluated with negative personality traits, such as most of those born in the 80s later are greedy, seditious, aggressive, dirty, and world champions on emotional violence. These may sound so extreme to you when you read this, but you can be sure these are most refined ones. Because of the nature of the dictionaries, people are freely expressing their opinions on their first-hand experiences. And it's quite normal to have this kind of new media-related cultural scope. The authors explain, Russian women were generally praised with positive characteristics. The authors explain why Turkish men admire Russian women because they are truly faithful and extremely loyal. Well, to clarify, comments or evaluations under the women as persona theme contained personality characteristics such as loyal, modest, helpful, money-grabbing, capricious. Writers complained about Turkish women seeing themselves as princesses and striving for superiority. One of the comments about Turkish women was, "I have never seen any other creature who glorifies himself despite its uselessness." So the tone might be a little bit disturbing, but this is what we have in our hands when we make a kind of theme upon the persona, women as a in our thematic understanding. Well, The personality traits formed by the writers are consistent with traditional feminine roles. Traditional cultures stress and celebrate female loyalty and altruism. Women are, in most of the cultures, are expected to be loyal to his men. When it comes to the male characters, his loyalty is not that much questioned, right? So the same happens in the same understanding happens in the Turkish context as well. The new media functions as a tool for reproducing traditional gender roles. Don't you think it's a little bit ironic? The new media is a new, place, new arena that has to be, maybe creating some different understanding of each thing, but it is still reproducing the traditional understanding. It helps to recreate all the old-fashioned, so-called old-fashioned understandings, and it keeps reproducing it again and again. It just reaffirms it. So by means of this, in Turkey, the new media and its vast use areas are helping to recreate the traditional way of understanding by means of everyday life, cultural, values, and etc. So let's move on. We classified writers' comments about women's sexual appearance and sexual performance as the third theme. Of course, this is also an interesting aspect that we come across, or theme. The Turkish people, Turkish writers in these dictionaries are so keen on writing about sexual intercourse and their first-hand experiences in these kind of different nations. So, what surprised me a lot is that while they are talking about many different first-hand experiences, in Turkish culture, maybe you are all aware of this fact, we do not talk about these issues openly, or even with our closest friends, we do not generally, or it is not generally, considered okay to talk about these issues, but they can openly write down very detailed entries about this. So that's what new media helps them to have this kind of comments in their lives. So, and the last theme that I would like to touch upon and we come across while I was writing down, the woman as a wife. Across our sample, comments that identified women with wifely or maternity roles were classified under the same theme of the woman as a wife as well. Writers emphasized traditional gender stereotypes such as self-sacrificing, mothering, and nurturing while depicting women. Writers expressly indicated that marriage to a Russian woman is the right decision because they are good at cooking. Despite that, some comments stated the opposite argument that they do not have to do housework. According to writers, whatever makes a Russian woman a good wife is that they devote themselves to their men and do everything for their men's happiness. One of the comments states that a Russian girl puts her man in the center, and she aims to make him happy. So, when you read this comment, you will think that a Turkish woman does not do it, okay? Because you may think, by making a kind of comparisons, and you make lots of different meanings out of these expressions, and it'll take ages to come up with a certain one. Similarly, Turkish women were mentioned as they will be the perfect mothers and wives for devoting themselves to their families and doing everything for their family's sake. One of the writers glorifies Turkish women under the loyal wife or mother concept. I do not know any nation of women who are as loyal to their home, husband, and children as Turkish women. So there might be some contradicting opinions as well. On the other hand, on the one hand, Syrian women in examined weblogs were seen as a threat to Turkish culture because of degenerating existing values, and their families were perceived as a danger that involved physical violence. On the other hand, they were evaluated as victims in the comments based on the fact that they had to migrate from their countries without any possessions. One of the millions of victims of the Syrian civil war that has been going on for years. Thereby, they were perceived as helpless, hopeless, miserable, and making unwanted marriages, selling their bodies, and being beggars were attributed to their victimized positions. So, women's bodies were evaluated according to specific socially constructed standards of beauty in the minds of the Turkish bloc writers. Women who deviated from these standards were devalued and even defeminized because they threatened the dominant ideology of masculinity. Also, the contents of the themes place women in a secondary position in their relations with men. The contents that reduce women's existence to an object that satisfies men's sexual desires reproduce the hierarchical gender structure. Women's bodies are depicted as objects for men to actualize manhood, and the stereotypical images of women function as positioning them outside the human zone. Thank you for listening.